to the Choice, Change and Action podcast, where you get to choose, change and take action to create a different today and a different future. These are my stories of choice, change and action, along with the phenomenal guests I have on here. From a really young age, I've always desired to create a change in the world. The planet has been a constant inspiration to me, and Access Consciousness has shown me the tools to know that anything is possible. And I keep choosing. What are you going to choose? Hello, everybody, and welcome to this podcast. Ooh, easy for me to say. Choice, Change and Action podcast. So you are with me, your host, Simone Milasas. And today I have, he's not Italian, but, you're in Italy right now, aren't you, Graeme?
Yes, I am, yeah.
Yes. Yeah, okay. So Graeme Crosskill is a certified facilitator of Access Consciousness, and you've been living in Italy for some time, but you're actually from South Africa, correct?
Correct, yeah.
So you're not, we won't ask you to speak Italian, and they'll notice the accent.
Please don't ask me to speak Italian.
So, okay, so I booked this podcast to do with Graeme after we were having a conversation, because I've got a class coming up, which I think when this podcast comes out, the class will be in 1 or 2 days from this. And it's called Choice for Wealth, and it's the intermediate class for Right Riches for You. And I'll be co-facilitating it at Castello di Casaborgoni in Italy, the castle that I'm part owner of. With Dr. David Kubis. So both of us will be facilitating the class. And I was talking to Graeme, who's one of our tech guys, and we were just having this conversation about wealth and riches and creation. And the way the conversation went, I said, let's do a podcast. So here we are today. Now I want to address, and we're going to get into that, but I also want to address a different energy at the beginning of this too, because I mean, by the time you listen to this, I already would have done this call, and I have a call starting tomorrow called Receiving the Good, the Bad and the Ugly. And my day today has just been so friggin' strange. And for a few days, actually, it's like I wake up pretty happy. Like I'm one of those people who wakes up and is pretty creative and pretty happy, and, you know, life is good. And yeah, it's, you know, stuff comes along, and how do I handle it? And I do, and, you know, all that sort of thing. And the last few days doesn't seem like that. I'm like, where the fuck did my happy go? Like, who stole it? Who took my happy? Like, it just seems to be gone. And I spoke to a mutual friend of ours, Christopher Hughes, this morning, and I was so grateful that he was happy, because I rang him and I said, I just need to vent. And I was driving in my car, and I spoke to him for like 20 minutes and was just like, rah, rah, rah. And I kept going, I'm sorry. And he was like, Simone, it's okay. You don't need to say sorry. It's okay. And one of the things he was saying to me is about just being happy and choosing happy, you know, no matter what. And that wasn't his words verbatim, but the way he was saying it was sort of bringing me back to this place of me. And one of the things I will always look at to find me is in nature. Like, and as I was driving, I had trees on every side and everything, but I just didn't seem to be receiving from nature the way I usually would. Yesterday, I took myself off. I left all my phones in the house and everything, and I took myself off, and I mean, it's only across the road, and went to the beach, and it was really windy, but dove into the ocean. And it was, I guess, my first swim here in this, you know, season. And there was no one in the water, and it was really beautiful. It was pretty rough, so you had to be pretty present. And it was awesome. It sort of woke me up. And that's what I was looking for, is this. I was looking to find that vibrancy that I so often be. And that's how I be. And then today, again, I was just like, for God fucking sake, like, da, 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 you know, like everything. And I want to talk about that. And I want to admit that, because so many people look at, you know, my life, or they see me in classes or podcasts or interviews or things like that, and other people, and they go, oh, everything's great. And it's like, no, everything is great. You are correct. And sometimes the shit hits the fan, and it's like, are you dodging the fan? Is it just going, you know, the shit going straight into your face? And it's like, how are you handling it? So this afternoon I pinged Graeme and I said, hey, I was like unsure about if I wanted to do this podcast or not. I was so tired this morning, and he's in Europe. So by the time he woke up, he left me a message and said, look, whatever you want to do, just let me know. And I went, yeah, let's just cancel it. And then I went outside and I was just sitting outside and I went, I think I might go down to my wine cellar and get a bottle of wine, which is totally fine. But I went, I'm doing that because I want to avoid whatever this is. There's a difference between having a glass of wine and enjoying it and going and getting a bottle of wine to drink because you're pissed off and frustrated and don't know what the fuck is going on and how to deal with it. And I went, okay, no. So I rang Graeme and I went, hey, changing my mind. I said, I do want to do the podcast because I know I need to create. I need to choose something different. And I think that's a really key element with where we want to swing in here too. And I just did a live on Instagram and Facebook, and I addressed the energy as well. And now we're doing this podcast, and I've got another live later with somebody in the Middle East. And by that time, I might have a glass of wine. I might not. I don't know. I might jump in my sauna. There's all different choices. But the first few things I want to mention here is it's okay to choose whatever it is you want to choose. It's okay if you want to go get that bottle of wine. It's okay if you want to throw something at the wall. It's okay if you want to do a podcast, if you just want to sit and watch TV, or if you want to go for a run. Whatever it is that you choose is okay. But what I would like to invite you to is to check in on your choice. Is that choice contributing something greater to you and doesn't match the energy of what it is you'd like your future to be? And I found this quote from Gary Douglas, who's the founder of Access Consciousness. And it says, choice creates. Every time you make a choice, you actually pull energy into that choice that creates the future. I'm even going to read it again just because I love it. Choice creates. Every time you make a choice, you actually pull energy into that choice that creates the future. So, I could have gone downstairs, got a bottle of wine and drank that and probably had a really nice time and watched a good movie. It's not like I was about to slip my wrist or anything. I just wasn't. It was that I knew if I created something, if I chose to create something, that would create the future that I'm after. And the topic here that we want to sort of address when I was talking to you is, you were saying there's so many things on, social media everywhere out there that people are sort of like these hustlers way of creating wealth and creating riches. And what you started commenting, which I think matches this energy, is what's your style? What's your way? Like, what choice are you going to make that contributes the energy to create the future that you desire? So when you see all of this, what is it that comes up for you, or what is it that you started to look at?
Yeah, I love that. And it's so brilliant because like a few months ago, I was spending some time in South Africa just by myself. And I was very much similar. I've had like the last 2 years have just been so phenomenal, and also waking up super joyful, super generative. And then I would say the last week I was there, all of a sudden I was just like hit by this, what the fuck is going on? Where did it all go? And I realized what actually happened a week prior to that is I got an energy in my life and in my world of demanding so much more of myself and so much bigger of myself. And it wasn't just like this tiny, oh, okay, I'm going to create something just like that. It was just this huge, like, I'm fucking done playing small. And I literally went into that energy, and then my whole universe went, and it's been like that for the last 2 months now. And so I would say, like, on that where it's okay to not have good days and stuff like that. Absolutely. I think the biggest thing is you have to find your style of, when you've made such a big change and demand in your life, there's a way to get that old energy out of your life, but don't buy it as real and true. I think that for me was the big thing, because I also like sit in that vent stage. I'm like, what is this? But the minute you make that whatever's coming up real and true, I think that's the where you talk about the choice in that quote with Gary from The Choice. It's like, are you choosing that is your reality, or is your choice you just letting it out and getting it out? So
yeah, and I love that you said that too, because when I was venting to Chris today, And he would ask me a question, I'd go blah 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 blah, and I go sorry, and he was like, please don't apologize. It's okay. You're allowed to vent, right? And then he would go, but what's underneath it? And every time he asked me that question, I sort of went off on another tangent, but I got somewhere else. And it was interesting. What I arrived to was my incredible caring about a few projects that we have and people that are in my life, that I just was so frustrated I couldn't make things easier in this moment. And yet that's probably a lie, because I am making things easier. But it was interesting because on the surface, I was like, blah, 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 blah. And then he kept going, but what's underneath that? Like, what's underneath that? And that's where I got to. And I was like, okay. And then I was like, God, then it's like, had that sense of helplessness, just so desiring for change and what can I do and what can I be, and it's never doing enough and blah, 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 and all of that, which is bullshit. That's like every humanoid I know has the point of view that they're never doing enough and they could always be doing, which is true. You could, right? And
totally.
I like enjoying my life. I like creating a living. Like I don't just want to tick things off and go, oh, this is my day, this is my life, and it's boring as hell, because it's not. What can I choose that allows me to live in totality in a way that even surprises me? And I think so much of what you sort of pinged me with, Graeme, and why this podcast came up is that energy of, what is living for you? What is your style? And does it include money? Does it include wealth? Does it include riches? What's your personal hustle that you can be for you and not judge,
Yeah, it's so good questions. And what that shows me, like I went to Anthony Mattis's opening of the symphony class a few weeks ago, and he actually worked on me as a part of the class and had a session. And what I realized is, I've always looked at like, okay, my style is like the way in which I make money. And that really changed for me, because what I started to acknowledge is like what actually I required for me to feel good about myself and my day was something so different. It was in that session, he showed me what it was to be okay and be safe, which was very, very interesting. And I realized like how much I had never had safety in my life. Like I'd never felt safe about my choice or about who I am. And he was that energy for me.
Wow.
And and from there I was like, all these projects that I always try to choose, like a business or a something like the way to make money, it never made me feel safe. And I was like, damn, okay, what does make me feel safe? And I was like, being with Access and working on the stream team is one of those areas, because even though it's chaotic and it changes all the time, Access has always taken care of me. Access has always got my back, no matter what. Like, I can always reach out and say, hey, this isn't really comfortable for me, or this doesn't work, or whatever. And they're like, hey, okay, how can we work it out? How can we make you feel okay with what's going on, and making sure your life is moving forward with us? So that's when I look at like, what's my style, is like, where am I in that whole computation of what I'm choosing,
What else did you come to with that? I love that. I love that insight you had of being safe. It's like, what else did you come to with that? Like, what else did you unravel anything else and discover anything else that creates that safe for you?
Oh, so much. I was like, wow, it's just like it brings up so much for me, because a lot of it came from my family and my upbringing, and they used money all the time as a way of insecurity. And so the priority was always, okay, money will make you feel safe, and that's really not real or true, because money is as chaotic as we are. And it's so up and down. But also the other really, really huge thing that the safety thing allowed me to finally be aware of was I also always felt like a loser. Like I had this foundation that I was just a loser. So what that would create for me is I would end up choosing projects where I would lose. I would end up choosing people where I felt less than. I ended up, doing all these weird things that just wasn't about, how can I feel safe in my life and how can I win, at the end of the day? And not from the polarity of winning, but just
Yeah.
know that even if something doesn't work out, like there's a winning in my world in this life. And so that was a big change for me as well. And so these are like these two styles that are starting to show up for me. It's like, okay, will this make me feel safe if it doesn't work out? Am I going to feel safe with myself if this doesn't work out? Am I choosing projects or am I choosing styles of making wealth and revenue and income that are winning for me? Like, again, it's not about, okay, the result. It's, is my life going to get bigger and better? And do I feel good with that and okay?
No, I was just going to ask you. So when you referred to winning a couple of times, what is that for you? What does that look like for you? What does that mean?
Sure. How do I say that? It's like, sure.
So
I
if
just,
you have a day in your life, yeah,
sorry, yeah. I
go.
just have this demand that I'm just not going to lose anymore. I'm not going to choose things based on I have to prove that I'm not losing.
That.
Yeah.
Yeah. And what if you didn't have to prove anything to anyone? And we spend so, I mean, gosh, I did that for years trying to prove, prove your worth, prove that, whatever it is. And if you want a great question that I have that Gary came up with a while ago is, who do you think of before you choose? And I love that question because so often it's like we think of others before we choose. And in truth, what if we started to think of ourselves before we choose? And, we started, talking about this conversation from wealth and riches. This is all included because I love that you said, money has so much, is chaotic as well. And money doesn't make you feel safe. It can have the pretense of making you feel safe, but it doesn't make you feel safe. It's like, or comfort. Like it's a while ago I was looking at my life and going, what am I not willing to lose? And it was really strange. Every time I asked a question, I came up with my house and I was like, am I really that attached to my house? Like, you know, but then I broke it down again and I went, okay, what is it about my house? And what I got to, and Gary was actually asking me questions, was comfort. It's like, oh, there's a comfort here. I mean, like I'm about to go stay at the castle and I booked Casa Camellia again, which by the way is a 2-bedroom apartment that's just off the castle. You can stay in the castle. It's so amazing. It's so beautiful. And we'll have all the details in the subscription note. And actually, I think for the next 45 days or something like that, by the time you listen to this, it's probably 30 days. If you book the castle, there's like a 15% special price that you can get off. And we'll have the details in the subscription note. But for me, staying in Casa Camellia has that comfort. And I learned to start recognizing where that comfort is for me. It's just, it has that relaxation for my body and the relaxation for me waking up somewhere where it's comfort. And then I just bounce into my creativity and bounce into being me. So that's what I was looking for, is that what creates that place where I can be me. And I get the sense, Graeme, is that what you were looking for with the safe as well? How do you be you?
My style I would have called that feeling safe, right? And what
Mhm.
you call relaxation and comfort. And it's interesting that you brought up the house because I've never owned a house, which is really interesting.
Mhm.
And it's the one thing that I would definitely say now, knowing where I'm headed, creates that safety for me. But previously,
Mm.
I couldn't have that because I wasn't creating my life from my style. I was creating it from something else that I'd bought into or something else that I
Mm.
thought was more valuable. And so I had always had this place where I could end up on the street, which is not a very good feeling and not a very safe way of creating,
Wow.
So
Wow.
yeah.
Wow, that's interesting. interesting because I've never had the point of view that I'd end up on the street. And interesting, even when I was traveling, like when I was 19 and left home, I had no, hardly any money. Like the money I went away with is horrifying that I lasted that long, 3 months traveling around America, like living off, boiled eggs stolen at the Airbnb I mean, not the Airbnb, the backpackers that I could eat later for dinner. And we used to go to bread shops and ask for their day old bread so that we put Vegemite on it and an egg. And that was our dinner, like we were, I had no money. But I never had the sense that I would be homeless or I'd be on the streets. And I've got to say, my father was a big influence with that. When I left, I remember he gave me a credit card and said, "This is for backup." I didn't use it once, never used it.
Amazing.
But it was there. And I always knew that my father would do anything. He would bend over backwards. If I said I need to come home, he would buy me a ticket. I never used it, but it was there. And it's an energy I get that is there. And for me, that all leads to, as you're calling it, your style. And I'm going to say, yeah, it's your style. And it's the way you choose to receive, the way you choose to create your life. And to me, it's the way you choose to create your wealth. Because wealth is not, I mean, money is one aspect of it, but it's a small aspect that ends up showing up based on how do you choose to create the wealth of you, the wealth of your life, the wealth of your living. Like, what is it? I love the way you keep referring to it as your style, because, if you bought a house years ago, that wasn't you. You were sort of like buying a house based on somebody else's point of view. Whereas now it feels like if you buy a house, it's like, oof, it's going to be yours,
Exactly.
What are you going to choose with it?
Yeah.
So what else have you learned about your, go ahead.
No, sorry, you go. Apologies, go.
Well, what else have you gained awareness of with your choice for wealth, your choice for style? Like I want to comment, and I don't want to like rubbish people here or judge people, because that's not what this is about. But there is a lot of stuff on social media and around that's about like, how do you get your quick hustle in, and how do you make a quick dollar, and how do you do this? And so much of it doesn't make me feel lighter in my world. Yeah. It's sort of like, it makes it, for me, it comes off as a wrongness if I'm not choosing that, for starters. And I have dove down some rabbit holes with some people and some videos and certain people and watched them and sort of, looked at it. And then it's like, whoop, come back out of that rabbit hole. And then what do I know is where, I keep choosing from. But it's like, so what else have you noticed with that? And what's your style? What's your hustle?
Well, yeah, I would say that the big change for me was, my style is the 10% for sure.
Mm-hmm.
That 10% account.
You want to give a little quick synopsis of that? I have spoken about that on previous calls, but someone new might be like, what's the 10% account?
Yeah, so that's where you put away 10% at least of everything that comes into your life. Let's say financially. I've even been looking at that tool actually in a different way. I've been looking at like, how can I create a 10% for my relationships, as an example, like, which is a weird way of looking at it, but I'm just like, if the 10% is giving me so much, and that it's a do or die reality. I'm like, my 10% is nothing can now touch that. I'm like so committed to that, which is really, really beautiful. And then I'm like, okay, how do I use that tool into other areas of my life? Which I think is a weird question to ask, but it's like, what is a 10% account, like an honor account of your relationship? What is a 10% of, like these other areas in your life, which is really a part of, I would say, my style. Yeah.
Do you know, I love that question. And, what comes up for me when you ask that is space. Because I love the people I get to spend time with, etc. And I require space. So if I don't get the space that goes with it, it's not going to work.
Exactly. And that's also like what we were speaking about in the beginning. Like, you have these people in your life that I would say you could feel safe with, where you can call and say, hey, look, I got to get this out. But if you're finding someone that is not matching your style, which is the space and the comfort, it just doesn't work that well. And that's a part of your 10%, right? That's like,
Yeah.
having this wealth in your life of people that really actually have your back without a point of view.
It just makes me breathe easier. It's like I call it the calming goats. You know, Ferdinand the movie. Have you seen that? Because Gary ages ago called me a calming goat, and I was like, "What do you mean I'm a calming goat?" And he was like, "You calm everyone down." And he said that I'm not that anymore. He said, "Now you're like Angus. You're just like just go 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 go." I was like, "Well, I guess you
Yeah.
swap over." But I do have some people in my life that are like a calming goat, and when I'm around them, I'm just have that sense of calm. Which again, I'm going to bring it back to it's being me.
Yeah.
Like, that's
Yeah.
the base of me, and for me, every choice you make like, I'm gonna read that thing one more time because it's every time you make a choice, you actually pull energy into that choice that creates the future, and for me, that's your choice for wealth.
And
Like
it's interesting what this brings up for some reason, and like going into the style again and looking at everybody else's way of doing things. Like one of the things that I really, really enjoy is watches. Um,
mhm,
and you know, it's interesting because there's this reality of like you can flex with watches and watches can be an investment. I mean, watches can be more expensive than a house. But what I started choosing was I started celebrating these big changes and these big choices in my life by buying a watch called a G-Shock, a Casio G-Shock, and they anything between 100 to 250 euro. They're not hundreds of thousands of euro. And it's really interesting because the other day I walked into my house and I like for the first time I like looked at all my watches and I've got like five of them. I'm like, wow, I have things. I have stuff. It's really, really cool.
yeah,
You know? And
yeah,
it was just such a change for me. And I love like matching these watches to what I wear. And like I'm wearing this
yeah,
one today, and it's like that was $180. It's not like a lot of money, but
yeah, yeah,
for me it
but
matches
you
my
enjoy
style.
it. Yeah, I love that.
Totally.
You enjoy it. I just watched this movie this afternoon when I was getting my bars run. Let me think if I can remember the name of it. Um, but it's on Apple TV. Oh, a woman, Flora and Son, I think it's called.
Right.
And it was really cool. This woman, and it's based in Dublin. And there's this one scene, and she's learning the guitar, and she learns a chord, right? And she's like, she's stoked. She plays guitar with this chord, and she's like, oh, this is great. And he goes, yeah, that's yours. And you didn't pay for it. It's like not, it's not something. He goes, but that's your chord. You have that. And he goes, isn't it beautiful? And she's like, yeah. And she plays it again, sort of thing. That's it. You've got it. And I
Yeah.
was talking to this friend of mine. It was like, wow, how many things do we just take for granted, or because it's quote unquote not worth any money? I mean, it could be worth money. You could end up writing a song and being a, famous musician or something like that. But there's so much stuff that we just take for granted and we don't acknowledge that that's ours. It could be, years ago, I was walking in this Mind, Body and Spirit Festival in Sydney, and with a business that I had years ago called Good Vibes for You. And I had this T-shirt on. It was a T-shirt that I had designed, and it had written on there, be open to the moments of life. Do not be afraid. That's what was written on there. And it was really packed. And I'm walking through, this aisle, and this guy is walking, towards me. And I see him look at me, glance down at my T-shirt, not at my boobs, but my boobs were there, but at my T-shirt. And I could see him read it, like, when someone's reading your T-shirt. And I could see in his head, this be open to the moments of life, do not be afraid. And he just looked up at me and gave me this look as we were passing. And I will never forget it, because I was like, that's what I want to create in people's worlds. And I knew
Mm.
that those words changed his day, could have changed his life. But that so matched the energy of what it was I wanted to create in the world. That was my choice for wealth, choice for a different future. He didn't buy the T-shirt. He didn't, I mean, he may have later, I don't know. But it's like, but that moment, I was like, yeah, that. And it didn't cost anything.
I love that. And that's also like again it brings us when we started like you were saying that you were missing a little bit of that vibrancy and all that, and you normally go to nature. And what I've also started receiving and looking at, it's like where you get to connect to your bigger commitment, connect to that bigger, like, essence of creation, as it were. And one of the things that has been going on this week, we just had Global Bars Day, and man, it was full on. And
Yes, it was.
myself,
We started here in Australia. Yeah.
yeah. And it was really beautiful because this is one of the areas where I've been asking to demand more, and I was very grateful that I got, how do I say, like, not believe in, but like supported to lead with Merlin the whole tech side for the whole day.
Trusted.
Um, Sorry? Trusted.
Trusted.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Trusted. And You know, we met every single translator because we trained a new system. We met them one on one, like every single one of them. And it was challenging because, everyone comes from a different space, but that ability to be like, this is for Global Bars Day, and Global Bars Day is literally going to change the world. It takes you out of the conflict, it takes you out of the pettiness, it takes you out of the frustration. It was just like, and then at the end of the day, we got to look back at it, and what we created was just like, holy shit, that was cool.
Yeah. It was amazing. It was phenomenal. And we kicked it off here. And I know there was so many people behind the scenes that had so much to do with it. And we
Yeah.
kicked it off here in Australia. And there was a few tech things that were, not that smooth. And poor Yaku was just started like you could tell his whole world was coming in. And so every time there was a video on, I was like, relax, it's okay. It's okay. Like it's okay. People are friggin' loving this. It's fine.
Yeah.
And then after a while, he just sort of went, okay, and everyone sort of directed at him. It was quite full on as well. But man, it was just so amazing. We will have, this is Global Bars Day that we have once a year. One day, it was 13 hours, and 13 hours may seem long, but next time you're getting your bars run, put it on, watch it. Like I could not stay up for all the Europe thing. I came home and Chris and I had some champagne, and then I was like, I have to go to sleep. And then I woke up when the US was on and Dane was coming on. I had hardly any sleep, but it was fine. I don't think anyone slept at all, but we'll have it in the show notes here. So don't forget to subscribe to this podcast, and I'll have the link of where you can still watch that. It's on the Access Consciousness YouTube as well, and a bunch of other places. Highly recommend it. There is some incredible stories, and the way it was put together, like, thank you. It was incredible.
Yeah. And it was so inspiring. And that's what I would say again. What is your style? If we can come back to that question, it's like, what is your bigger picture that you can commit to and connect to in those moments where you're feeling frustrated, you're feeling a little bit lost? And what can you trust? Like, what could you choose that you can actually trust that energy of creation will always support you? Like, it'll always be there for you, as if you just drop those walls and barriers and we're like, okay, today's a shit day, but it's one step closer to what I want to create in the bigger world.
I love that. And thank you for doing this podcast with me, because that's what I chose. It was like, I was like, oof, I could just like not do this. And I knew that if I chose to do it, it would be one step closer to connecting to my, as you say, bigger commitment. I love that. Yeah. And I also knew that if I did it and you came on and it was crap or shit, or I just went, wah, and maybe just vented to you, I knew that would be okay too. Although you would have just gone and ironed a shirt for me, but hey, it's like, I just knew, just go, like, and don't try and work it out. Don't try and get a result. Don't try and conclude what something's going to be like or anything like that. It's like, just choose. And for me, that is so much that you choosing, like, I love that you said that, connecting to your bigger commitment. That's a choice for wealth. That's something that's huge. No one can take that away from you. No one.
Exactly. That is exactly that. Yeah. They will try, but it's that again, I think that's what will really contribute a lot. If you can find that thing in your world where you just know there's no definition, there's no result of it, but just know that that's got your back and that's the world you want to be in, and just go for it.
Yeah. So what is that for you? Your bigger commitment?
You know, it's interesting. It's creating really having this world where we can just, and I'm just going to use the word it is for me, but we can feel safe. We can feel safe again. We
Mm,
can feel good about what's actually going on in the world and where people are coming from. And, we don't have to always feel so mistrusted of everything and anything that's going on and being projected at us.
yeah. Yeah.
And I know that
I like that.
bars and the tools of access, I mean, man, that is a champion of a safer, a safer trusted reality for sure. For sure. Yeah.
Yeah. It
I'm not
certainly
sure
is. I'm just
if we have a lot of time, but it was like when I was in South Africa, I was going to this cafe every day to work, and it was just the amount of people that were talking about the mind and positive and negative, and it's like people are so hungry, and all I wanted to do was just get the tools of access to them, and that I was like, we have something so good here. So yeah.
we do. Yeah, I I totally agree with you, Graham, and thank you. And from a really early age, for me, that bigger commitment was, creating more consciousness on the planet. But that's not how I would have described it as when I was younger. I would have said, I wrote a big piece about vulnerability, and I would have said like creating more vulnerability in the world, because I was always
Mm,
like, I don't get how come people treat each other like they do, or the planet. I was like, this planet's amazing, and then we do things to destroy it, or and it's not black and white, and it's not binary encoding. It's not on off switch. It's your choice that you make every single moment of the day that creates a different future. And for me, I created this business, Good Vibes for You, and I had all this merchandise and stickers and t-shirts, and hoping to wake people up like that gentleman at Mind Body and Spirit Festival. And then I met Gary and Dane and just went, holy shit. Access
mhm,
consciousness is creating this a hell of a lot quicker than what I was doing. I just had this theory I was going to run around and just grab everyone by their shoulders and say, don't you get it? There's got to be something different than this. So I am incredibly grateful for Access Consciousness also. And I want to leave with one tool here too of, if you are listening to us on Spotify, don't forget you can go over to YouTube as well. We're on YouTube now. And if you're watching us, then you'll see this, but I'm just putting the little banner down the bottom of the mantra of Access Consciousness, which is, all of life comes to me with ease and joy and glory. Like all of life comes to us with ease and joy and glory. And you know what? You don't have to work out what that is. You can just say that, 10 times in the morning, at night, or 100 times a day. Sometimes when I'm getting like a massage or something, my OCD sets in, and I'll just, all of life comes to me with ease and
mm,
joy and glory. All of life comes to me with ease and joy and glory, because it's the good, the bad, and the ugly. It's not just waking up and having every day be this creative, wonderful, happy day. Like my day today was not like that. And thank you, Graham. And thank you to Shannon, my assistant, who ran my bars, and so many people wonderful people I have in my life that I had interactions with that show me more of me. And I'm super grateful for so many people. It's like, how did we get so lucky? So,
mm.
Graham, is
And
there
thank
anything
you.
that you would like to leave the listeners with here on this podcast?
I would say like what is like what can you start what's your style of getting back to your creative and generative energies, and like what can you add in your life that will make you feel, just my words, feel safe in those moments where things are changing.
Yeah, I love that. Cool. So, thank you so much for joining us here today. Thank you, Graham, for being here. I will see you next week at the castle. So, and we have a Choice for Wealth class coming up. Like I said, that'll be in the show notes with myself and David Kubis. I don't even know what the dates of that is. All I know is I leave here on the 31st of October, and the class starts on, it's only 3 hours a day and it's for 3 days, and it starts on the 4th of November from the castle. You can join online or live, and we'll have the details in the show notes, like I said. If you would, but it is an intermediate class. You must have done Right Riches for You before that. But if not, I will see you somewhere in the world. And thank you for being here. Thank you for joining us. And please share this podcast, do all that stuff. Follow us on Instagram. We've got our Choice, Change and Action podcast Instagram as well. And thank you, Graeme. I am truly grateful for you. Honored that you were here. Great conversation.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Been great. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Bye. If you enjoyed this podcast, please make sure to hit the follow or subscribe button on your favorite listening platform to get notified of new episodes. We read all the reviews, so if there's any topic you would like to hear about, let us know. If you'd like to know more about the tools, information, and classes mentioned in the podcast, head on over to SimoneMilasas.com and follow me on Instagram at Simone Milasas, or the podcast has its very own link on Instagram at Choice, Change and Action. Don't forget, you can download the show notes. And lastly, have way too much fun today.